You know, long before Hitchcock was considered the master of suspense, there was Marie Belloc-Lowndes and her 1913 novel, The Lodger. It's a masterpiece, really. And its central idea is just terrifying. It doesn't show you the monster breaking down the door. It asks, what if the monster politely knocked and paid you a month's rent in advance, in cash? So let's get into this absolute masterclass in psychological terror and see how Lowndes builds a world of suspense that is just unbearable.
Okay, so first, you have to picture the scene. This is London, but it's a London that's literally being choked by fog and by fear. And the fog, it's not just weather in this story, it's practically a living character. It's this thick yellow blanket that hides whatever horrors are stalking the streets. And believe me, a horror is stalking. There's a killer out there. They call him the Avenger, and he's preying on the city's women. He's a total ghost, a phantom in the night, and his bloody work has sent this wave of pure terror into every single home. So right in the middle of all this citywide panic, we zoom in on one household. This is where we meet Ellen and Robert Bunting. Now, these aren't just random people. They used to be somebody. They were proud, respected servants. But now, oh man, they have fallen on seriously hard times. So their world isn't just being threatened by the killer outside. There's another kind of horror, a quiet, creeping ruin happening right inside their own home. And this really just lays it all out, doesn't it? You've got these two nightmares happening at the exact same time. On one hand, you've got the whole city terrified of the Avenger. On the other, you have the Buntings' private, silent nightmare of being completely broke. They're literally selling off their memories, piece by piece, just to survive. And that detail about the armchair, wow, that just gets me. They paid 37 shillings for it, a symbol that they'd made it, and now they're being offered a measly 12. It's not just furniture. It's their dignity being sold for scrap. 2 shillings and 9 pence. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That is everything they have left in the world. Everything. The next step from here is the workhouse, which was basically a prison for the poor. This is what real desperation looks like. It takes away all of your choices. So when a stranger finally knocks on their door looking for a room, you can bet they are not going to be asking for references. Right? They simply don't have that luxury. And then it happens. Right out of that thick, creepy fog, a man arrives. He's tall, he's a total mystery, and all he's got is this one little black bag. For the Buntings, it's like a prayer has been answered. It's a miracle. But you know that feeling you get when something just seems way too good to be true? From the second he steps inside, you just know this isn't salvation. This is something else entirely. These are some of the first words he speaks. Their new lodger, a Mr. Sleuth. And you have to imagine the intensity. It's not like, oh yeah, this'll do. It's like he's been searching for this one specific place his whole life. He's weirdly fascinated by the room's features, especially the gas stove and an old stone sink, even touching them with what the book calls a lingering, caressing touch. It's immediately so unsettling and a huge sign of the strangeness to come. And man, the red flags just start popping up all over the place. I mean, who shows up with basically no luggage? He doesn't even have a razor. He pays a ton of money up front in solid gold coins, but when they ask about a reference, nah, don't worry about it. Back then, that was a huge deal. And then there's this weird insistence on the gas stove for his so-called scientific experiments. Yeah, right. For poor Mrs. Bunting, every one of these is like a little alarm bell going off in her head, but then she feels those gold coins in her hand, and suddenly those alarms get a whole lot quieter. So you can imagine that initial feeling of relief, right? They can buy food again. They can pay their bills. But that feeling, it doesn't last. It starts to sour, to curdle into something else. For Mrs. Bunting, that joy just evaporates. And what's left is this constant creeping dread. The man upstairs isn't their savior anymore. He's this giant, terrifying question mark hanging over their heads, and his presence feels like this heavy, dark shadow on the whole house. And this is where the story really gets under your skin, because now we are living inside Mrs. Bunting's terror. Think about it. She hears his footsteps all day, all night, just pacing, 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 like a caged animal. She's cooking his meals, she's cleaning his rooms. She is so close to him, physically, but she has absolutely no idea who this man truly is. That's the real horror, isn't it? He's both the reason they can eat and a source of this profound dread. And honestly, the more little clues she finds, the more she wishes she could just unknow them. Then the evidence starts to become, well, impossible to ignore. She's lying in bed, wide awake,
And she hears it. The floorboards creak. The front door opens and closes. He's slipped out into the fog. And what happens the next morning? She opens the newspaper, and her blood runs cold. Another victim of the Avenger. And the timelines match perfectly. It happens again. And then again, this time a double murder. For Mrs. Bunting, these aren't coincidences anymore. They're piling up into a terrifying, unspeakable certainty. And then we get to this scene. Oh man, she's in his rooms, cleaning, and she moves a piece of his furniture, and she sees this dark trickle oozing out. She hesitates. Then she touches it with her finger, and it's bright red against her skin. Instantly, her mind leaps to the most horrific conclusion possible. But then she pulls back. No, it's just red ink, she tells herself, frantically. It has to be. The lodger uses red ink to mark his books. It's such a masterful picture of denial, of the mind desperately trying to rationalize away a horror that is just too big to face. Well, that denial she was clinging to, it doesn't last long. One day she's listening outside his door, and she hears him chanting passages from the Bible. But not in a normal voice. It's this high, unnatural, sing-song voice, and the passage is this venomous, nasty bit about a strange woman. Suddenly, it all clicks into place. The newspapers have been saying the Avenger is a religious fanatic who hates women, and now she's hearing it with her own ears. The link is unbreakable. This isn't just a lodger anymore. It's a zealot. So as we get to the end of the novel, you might be expecting some big, dramatic confrontation, right? A confession, a struggle. But that's not what Lowndes gives us. Instead, it's about this quiet, awful certainty that just descends on the Bunting household. The final confirmation comes, but not from the lodger himself. It comes from the outside world finally breaking in. And get this, the climax happens at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum of all places. Super creepy. They're in the Chamber of Horrors, surrounded by wax figures of famous murderers, and Mrs. Bunting overhears a police official talking. He's describing the prime suspect for the Avenger murders, an escaped lunatic suffering from religious mania, and the description he gives is a perfect point-by-point portrait of the man standing right beside her. In that single moment, her private terror becomes a sudden, shocking, public fact. And Mr. Sleuth knows. Instantly. He knows he's been recognized, and with this absolutely chilling composure, he pretends to feel sick, gets an attendant to let him out an emergency exit for some air, and simply vanishes, right back into the London fog he came from. He leaves the Buntings with no answers, just the terrible silence of his absence, and the crushing, crushing weight of their own complicity. And in this haunting final detail, we learn that as mysteriously as the lodger appeared, the murder stopped. The only physical trace of him ever found is this discarded bundle in a park, a newspaper wrapped around a pair of rubber-soled shoes and a long, peculiarly shaped knife. The tools of the Avenger's trade. For us, the reader, the mystery is solved, but the world of the novel is just left with questions, and Mrs. Bunting is left with a chilling, undeniable truth. And that leaves us with the story's terrifying central question. Mrs. Bunting chose silence. She was paralyzed by fear, but also by her own desperate need for security. It forces us to ask ourselves, faced with the same impossible choice, knowing what she knew, what would we have done?